and welcome to our today's session. We will be speaking today about M&A in Ukraine, investment into Ukraine, and Ukrainian recovery. This webinar was hosted by American Chamber of Commerce in Ukraine and co-hosted by KPMG in Ukraine, ECHO, and Advantage Ukraine. Let me introduce my co-speakers. I'm very pleased and honored to introduce today to you Anna Babic, the executive partner in ECHO. She is the head of M&A and corporate practice. Anna also chairs private equity, technology and communications, media and entertainment, as well as defense and security and aerospace industry groups. She is regarded by industry experts as one of Ukraine's leading transactional lawyers, and she focuses on international and domestic mergers and acquisitions, equity capital markets, and provides general corporate commercial advice to public and private companies. Her transactional experience includes leading roles on a range of some of the most complex high-value deals in recent Ukrainian history. And it is my big pleasure to say that I'm always happy and proud to work together with Anna and her team on Ukrainian transactions. And Anna will be speaking today about the resources that ECHO have produced for investors in Ukraine, and her and their company's outlook into investment opportunities and opportunities connected to recovery of Ukraine. Let me also please introduce Alexander Gryban, investment team lead at Advantage Ukraine. Alexander formerly served as Deputy Minister of Economy of Ukraine in 21-23, and he was spearheading the establishment of the Ukraine Development Fund in collaboration with major players like BlackRock, JP Morgan, with the support of McKinsey. In his current role as investment team lead at Advantage Ukraine, Alexander is dedicated to establishing an international insurance pool against military risks, and he is specialized in risk data exchange platform with the backing of Marsh McLennan. We know that this is one of the major questions, very important questions that is always asked by the investors in Ukraine in the agenda, and we are very much looking forward for Alexander to cover this topic today. I would also like to mention that Alexander has very extensive experience in the financial sector. He has managed the assets with a value of over $500 million and held key positions at Concord Capital and Amstar International Direct Investment Fund. Anna, Alexander, welcome to today's session, and we are very much looking forward to interesting presentations from you. My name is Svetlana Sherbatyuk. I'm the head of transaction services at KPMG Ukraine within our deal advisory practice. My job is to cover the due diligence process for the sell side and buy side of the Ukrainian deals. Also involved into the negotiations process and deal closing. Our team has an extensive experience working with domestic and international investors in Ukraine. And one topic that unites all of today's speakers is investment into Ukraine. It is important today as never before. We are very real and profound fans of promoting Ukraine into the international investment community, and I would like to share today with you our resources, some of our experience and knowledge that could be of help for those investors who are already present in Ukraine or those who are thinking about investing into Ukraine today or in the near future. So I would like to shortly introduce the research and report produced by KPMG in Ukraine, which is called M&A Radar. You have the link here that you can use. The report is published on our website at KPMG Ukraine. And the major idea behind this research is to demonstrate to the international and domestic investment community what is the status quo of the M&A and deal making in Ukraine today. We used to issue this report on an annual basis, and this was interrupted by the start of the full-scale invasion. Basically, it interrupted not only our work, but M&A in Ukraine altogether. However, we consider that it is very important to return to this topic today, and that the issue of this report is very timely because our observation and our research has demonstrated that there is activity on the Ukrainian market. There are deals being done and closed both by the domestic and the international investors. And we believe this is a very important message to the public and to the community to have a better understanding of how Ukraine continues to stand to the challenges of today's environment. There are a couple of things that I would like to mention about the report itself, and I will cover shortly the conclusions that we arrived at, and then you will be able to see all the details in the document itself. Apart from the PDF version of the report, which has an extensive overview of the deals environment and our outlook into the year to come, there is also a Power BI version of the report, which is a wider database, and I'm very proud to say that it contains the data analytics on the M&A deals in Ukraine start in 2013, so it's already a decade of the data on the Ukrainian deals. You are welcome to dig into it. It is interactive. You can do the analysis in different splits. Please use it whenever you need the information on the Ukrainian market in terms of deal making. Before speaking about the Ukrainian M&A, it is important to mention what was the picture in the M&A globally in the recent years. And 2023 was the year with the biggest challenges in deal making. It was the biggest drop in M&A globally in the last 10 years. And this decline was driven by increase in interest rates, difficulties in deal financing, obviously connected to that, high volatility of capital markets, as well as macroeconomic and geopolitical uncertainty. So already the landscape was not very favorable for deal making. And then on the top of that, Ukraine had to face our own challenges, which are those kind that has never been seen before. And speaking about 23 in terms of M&A and investments into Ukrainian businesses, it is very surprising and very rewarding to see that 23 has picked up significantly. And of course, 22nd was with a very low base of comparison. However, if we look at 2021, we can see that 23 has reached over half of those volumes and value terms in terms of deals, which is amazing from my point of view, considering the circumstances and the situation that Ukrainian business has to work in. So in 23, we've observed over almost 50 deals and over $1.25 billion deal value. However, it is important to mention here that KPMG report covers the deals of the size over $5 million only. Of course, there are plenty of those which are below this threshold. This is just the methodology that we use. So please, if you see other numbers, don't consider them wrong or that something is not playing well there. It's just that our report covers the deals, the sizable deals of over $5 million. One of the traces of the Ukrainian M&A, it always has been like that, and it continues. And with the war environment, it has become even more obvious that not all deal makers are willing to disclose the value of the deals. Hence, the value of $1.25 billion is the minimum value of those deals that we are reporting about, because the transparency rate is only about 60%. Meaning that only 60% of the deal makers disclose publicly the value of the deals that they have concluded. So we can, arrive at the value anywhere above this amount. But this gives us some indication for comparison between the periods, so it's always useful to have. We've also observed that the average deal value has significantly dropped in Ukraine. It is at the minimum if we exclude the significant one-off deals. It's around $30 million on average for the Ukrainian market currently. Among the key observations, there are a couple of things that I would like to notify. The first one is that in terms of deal volume, we are above 60% of the 21st, the most successful year in Ukrainian M&A history. We do still observe the split between domestic and cross-border deals, which is pretty a good signal for the investment community, considering the circumstances. And one of the obvious conclusions about Ukrainian M&A is that IT sector continues to be one of the driving forces of Ukrainian deal making. And I would like to mention that apart from those deals which are included in our analysis here, there is a couple of dozens of deals below the 5 million threshold, with a total value approximately between $50 and $100 million. So IT is really driving the deal making in Ukraine in today's environment. We have 4 major industries, and Anna will be talking about this later as well, which have contributed to the majority of deal volume and deal value in Ukraine. As I mentioned, innovation technology, transport and infrastructure is one of the most interesting segments for deal makers for the obvious reasons. And agriculture, real estate and construction. And if we speak about the deal value, we should add telecommunications here as well. I will be talking about some of the landmark deals that have been closed in 23, and telecom is definitely a leader there. In terms of the split between the investors, who are the investors coming to Ukraine, it is my pleasure to know that there is about 50-50 split between the domestic and cross-border deals. And when we are speaking about the cross-border deals, we see that about 3/4 are actually inbound deals from the international investors. So each time I talk to my clients who are considering the acquisition in Ukraine, they are always asking, in the last 2 years, they are always asking a question: are there deals made at all? And are there deals made by the international investors? Yes, there are. The answer to both questions. And on the top of that, we can say that there are new investors, new international investors coming to Ukraine who are making their first time investment in Ukraine in these circumstances as well. One of the observations that we noticed over the last 2 years, which is very interesting and definitely becoming a trend, which can characterize the way the business is done in Ukraine now, and how the strategy and business development departments of the businesses look at their businesses today, is that we see the increase in the number of outbound deals. This is when the Ukrainian investors are eyeing acquisitions abroad. We can observe this for the reasons of diversifying the production base, as this is important, for example, for the metals and mining industry, and others depending on the capex-heavy production assets, as they want to diversify their risks or recover the assets that have been lost due to the risks imposed by the situation. This is also characteristic for those businesses which want to develop their business under current circumstances and diversify the opportunities for the growth of their business. We've observed this in pharmaceutical sector, in consumer markets, and in other sectors who are thinking how to further develop their business in this new reality. Speaking about the international investors coming to Ukraine, it is interesting to note that the split is almost even between the European investors and North American investors, and it was interesting to see that there have been no deals coming from the investors from Middle East or Asia, although we know that there are a lot of talks with these investors at the moment. Japan, Saudi Arabia, other countries of the Middle East. The conclusion we can make is probably that it takes, due to cultural differences, it takes longer time for these investors to make a move. You know, they probably need more time for negotiation. However, this is speculation, and we'll see how it moves further. But what is definite that there are talks with these investors that we observe as well. If you look into the major deals in key sectors, I will not go into too many details, but there are some deals which are very important for the Ukrainian market, and we really want to highlight them from the perspective of the investors' mood, investors making decision coming to Ukraine. For example, in communications and media in 23, we've had a deal announced about the acquisition of LifeCell, one of the major mobile operators in Ukraine, which has been disposed by Turkcell and acquired by NGG, the French telecom holding. And just yesterday or the day before yesterday, there was another piece of news in respect of the second part of this deal, where NGG acquired as well Data Group and Vola, the major fixed line internet provider and pay TV provider in Ukraine. So it is obvious that NGG has huge plans about Ukrainian market. This investment is just a beginning, because telecom is one of the industries which would require further investment into the business, and this is very exciting for the Ukrainian market. And we believe, and NGG is the first-time player on the Ukrainian market. They don't have any assets in Ukraine so far, so they made this bold decision and in these difficult times, and we are very thrilled about this deal and look forward to further developments in this regard. Telecom as a whole is a very interesting area for deal making. We've seen a number of deals that have already closed. There are discussions about other ones. They are majority of them are aimed at consolidation of the industry, where the mobile operators talk to the different providers of internet services. This is kind of a natural behavior, natural move of the market, and this is one of the drivers of the M&A activity on the Ukrainian market as well. In innovation and technology, I won't speak too much. Everybody knows that this is one of the sectors of the Ukrainian economy which has been the most resilient to the war environment and current situation. It is very rewarding to see how IT sector adapts and further develops business despite the circumstances. We would like to mention about one of the deals which was 70 million investment into Preply, the Ukrainian founded marketplace for foreign languages tutor services. The investment was led by Horizon Capital, the Ukrainian American private equity firm, and a number of investors who came with them into this investment. We also see other deals made by Horizon Capital, which is an amazing example of how the private equity continues to invest and develop their assets in the environment that we have in Ukraine at the moment. In real estate and construction, we've seen a couple of deals which related to property in terms of trade center, in terms of office center. One of the interesting deals that Alexander will probably mention about later is the deal made by Dragon Capital in respect of M10 Industrial Park in Western Ukraine. And a number of other deals in other industries. They demonstrate how the business adapts to the environment, how they continue to solve their logistics, infrastructural, commercial issues in Ukraine. And I will not go into too much further details. I will let you read about this in the report. And the last slide that I want to provoke some thoughts from you it relates to the difficulties and opportunities that are presented by the Ukrainian market today. And with this, I would like to hand over to Anna Babic and her presentation about what she's going to talk about today. Thank you.
Thank you, Svetlana. Good afternoon, our guests. Let me just quickly share my screen with the presentation. But meanwhile, I wanted to thank you about the data. I'm a big fan of these surveys about the M&A activity in Ukraine and the KPMG's work in particular, because it helps to address the questions about how you're doing in Ukraine. And of course, the media always want to cover something hot, but probably negative these days, but not showing and addressing by arguments and numbers how good we are for business opportunities, and that Ukraine could be a good place for risk tolerant, but still good businesses to start, and this is the time. So that's probably the short answer why we as a law firm ended up in creating sort of guide which goes beyond the legal expertise, but we have not been doing that just us. We did it in team with a fantastic, talented group of Saturday team. That's the ex Big Three consultants guys who created Analytical Center, where they do a fantastic job about screening our industries and putting them as the what's there and what are the opportunities. So this is it's just showed. You will get the QR code and you can browse around, but here I will not speak about just the content of the guide, but mostly what we feel now talking with the investors coming around. We started this work some time ago, and there was still sort of plan A expectation that the war gonna be over soon and the rebuild will start. But now, of course, we understand that the plan is slightly modified, but nevertheless, it crystallized and recalibrated the intentions of the investors we see now. And there is still quite a sizable group of potential investors like NGG. I like this example because this is the profile of the newcomer who really wants to do business in Ukraine, but they need a bit of help and education, making friends in Ukraine, finding a local partner in Ukraine, and understanding more about local specific, what's happening there, and how to just find better targets or the better relations in Ukraine. So this guide focuses on the key industries, and that's 10 of them which were chosen as a result of analytic and basically evidencing what will be the unicorns. I call them unicorns. In Ukraine, some are quite obvious and quite logical. Some could be quite new, like healthcare. I like this example. It's not the first one, but that's a huge market, and really, based on what we had, that's going to be a big development there. Maybe not the first stage, but in the second. So these industries, they interplay with what we have in the facility agreement, which you probably know that 50 billion have been promised by the EU, and it has its it's a commitment. It's not just money coming to Ukraine, but it's a huge commitment on Ukrainian side to develop and progress with the reforms in some industries which are heavily regulated, like energy, like infrastructure. Probably agriculture in part related to demining. That's a lot of work. That's going to be a plan. And on Ukrainian side, a lot of work. But the good side of that we actually have only one direction now, direction to EU. And we will be monitored by our partners and IFIs. And you know that Ukraine can progress if there are friends having look after us. And that's some of the milestone reforms are the milestones for these tranches of this Ukrainian facility. So these industries, I will touch a couple of them. We believe that all those aspects for Ukraine becoming a successful country and recovery of the economy. Some have been strong before, like digital and technology. And we see now a drift to, we don't call it mil tech, we call it defense tech, right? And real estate, infrastructure, energy, and agri looks like the new big things in Ukraine. Another part in the guide relates to the legal aspects of how to deal with the companies in Ukraine or how to start a greenfield or brownfield project in Ukraine, especially PPP concessions, some summary on investments as we see it now with the latest developments, and some basic rules about the merger clearances, about the currency control restrictions, unfortunately now, but still it is there. And we see that from the question I have from various investors, from private equity funds who come into Ukraine and doing their exercise on the feasibility study, to some strategic investors who want to participate in infrastructure projects, they all start from basics. And I think that's important for all of us on the Ukrainian side to help them to see these rules in Ukraine and understand how to work with that. Getting back to the industries, I wanted to make as an example. So I like defense, I call it same, but different. What we've learned about that, ironically and unfortunately, but on some side, fortunately, we evidence in the emerging huge industry in Ukraine, which will be a long-term trend. And Ukraine has all sort of preconditions to become successful there, from keen size IT business to some of our historical developments, which now being rethought and reproduced. Of course, it's you can't apply the logic of normal investor to this industry, as it's first, if that's a giant, it's a political decisions. Basically, there are rules, or if it's some, I call it minor forms, UAVs, then it's a Ukrainian production and it develops massively. So the industry now is undergoing the generally major change from the procurement rules to some just basic rules, how it functions. So the private business thinking about just launching some sort of venture which contributes to the defense and security of Ukraine. Miltech startups, they are booming. I think they are still at the stage of startup where you can probably find the guys with the bright idea in the garage, but the accelerators from the state and from the venture capitals which want to be successful in Ukraine and taking opportunity of the moment, they're already here. So we see the tree of Eric Schmidt from Google, setting up the fund for investing into defense tech startups. So if he believes in Ukraine, I think it's an argument to look at that. Of course, the industry is not at the stage where we see the mature targets, but it's quite normal that we see the beginning of that. We still have the ban on exporting basically weapon. But on the other hand, the ban for this income limit has been just abolished just recently, which for this industry is a huge change, and that's demand of the current context and the demand of Ukrainian army. And we see the major deals like Rheinmetall and Ukroboronprom setting up the first, would say, pilot JV, showing that potentially the localization and the local production and repair ventures can be and shall be present in Ukraine. So the next thing, it's not about defense, but it's all about everything else. So I already mentioned the Ukraine facility agreement and the Ukraine facility of the EU. And I think that's another good argument for the potential investors to say why Ukraine could be a good place to look at. It's not just we sell in brevity. And I don't like actually this discussion when it comes to the business people. We have much more, and that believe that the EU gives into us, and the Ukraine facility put in the rules and the reforms is a good argument to look at that. It touches many industries, as I said, green transition, energy, infrastructure, roads. So infrastructure seems to be like a next big thing, even before the end of the war. And we see now a strong interest from foreign investors. This industry comes hands in hand with the basically construction and real estate opportunities, because to build something large in Ukraine, probably with as a JV, as PPP with the government, you need to just understand how to build generally in Ukraine. What are the rules? Are you a trusted investor to just get this procurement and the project of rebuilding the big infrastructure projects? Another reason why we see it's a long-term focus on the alignment of Ukrainian transportation system with the EU. It doesn't require lots of explanation, but generally the logistics routes are just rethought. We are now some sort of dead end, yeah, on the east side, but the mainland roads are now much more used, and they need more capacity. That's clear, and we see a lot of bars around the dry ports and everything. So the railway roads, you see it as a customer even. So that's a huge opportunity, and Ukraine now on the regulatory side. There is already a draft law which passed the first reading on PPP that upgrades the rules of public-private partnership. The previous law, which is of relatively new, 2019, that had its probably one disadvantage is timing, because all these projects, they required the sort of technical assessment and some prep work, which amounted to at least 18 to 24 months. Now we don't have it, but the government understands this. So this new law, it is designed to fix the timing expectations and some other things to have them faster and better. That's very important. So it's going to be considered in the parliament soon as the second and the last reading. And the work on the final design of these innovations are being discussed in the committee. What we see for the infrastructure now also, it's a local partner. I think it brings us back a little bit to the beginning of 2000s, when we saw a lot of new investors coming and looking for the JVs or the partners. And now I see it again, because that's in fact, that's a crucial factor for success. You need someone who will help you with the whereabouts and the local knowledge of the industry, because it changes extremely fast. The things that were relevant to some niche in the industry 6 months ago can be already outdated in 6 months. That's the speed of Ukrainian context, and the local partner is the one who can help you with. Yeah, I already touched these legal considerations a bit. So again, Ukrainian facility plan has the transportation specific focus, just confirming that this is very important thing and the money will be invested into the direction. And there is a lot, that we have this tracker for the EU Association Treaty, and the transportation has a little bit room for improvement. It's just below 60% of work we have to do. Agriculture. This is something which been always a top industry for Ukraine. It's been given a lot to Ukrainian GDP. It was like, I think 11 something before the war. Now, of course, it's dropped, but thanks to just heroic and fantastic solutions in the Black Sea, it's been quite restored. But of course, the generally agriculture industry and processing is being reconsidered now, because we have the demining challenge now in Ukraine. I read recently that the size of, just to feel the scale, the size of area in Ukraine that requires demining is the size of Wales in the UK or the Massachusetts state of the US. So just to feel the need. And there are a lot of projects working on the best demining solutions of the 21st century, how to do it quicker. And there is a plan to do as a goal, again, addressed in the Ukraine facility to do that. So that's going to be a huge work for the decades for us. But nevertheless, we still have enormous capacity of this industry, and everybody says how that it will not be the easy way into the EU for this industry, but still Ukraine very much rely on the development. Regulatory wise, the Ukraine had very outdated legislation about basically limiting the sale of agricultural land. We were among very few countries who indeed had that inherited from Soviet Union. And there was since 2019 reforms basically uplifting it gradually. And this year, the last was again abolished, which now the legal entities, Ukrainian legal entities, are allowed to acquire agricultural land. For us, it's a big step forward, basically changing the logic, and that will reshape the industry, definitely. There are lots of things which shall be done on the technical matter, but again, they are important to facilitate the deals in this with the asset deals with the land. That's some synchronization of our state registers related to land cadastre and the register of property rights. That's from legal point, of course, as a lawyer say, it's important to have it operational and easy to use. So agriculture is still, despite the fact that that South was one of the our key areas for agriculture, is yet to be got back to Ukraine. But still, we see a number of deals happening in Ukraine. Last deal was, I can't say the name, but it was a good example how it's changing. So if you can't export the grains, it's better to export the processed food. And we saw some deals which basically shaped the chain of the industry, where the processing is being brought back to Ukraine, which historically we were exporting the commodities, and we now the goal of the country to keep the added value in Ukraine, basically keeping and developing the processing side of the agriculture. So just don't take a lot of time, because you can speak a lot about many of these industries. Just to sum up, what we see from we see the investors. They are coming at the stage where they want to understand better how the Ukraine functions. They want to understand how the government authorities are open to just to help them. The first question, of course, is about the physical security, but I think for now we have to admit that it is what it is. There's nothing can be added. Clearly, I see now that there is already a difference between the East and the West. I don't know whether it's good from generally from the human just point of view, but from business-wise, I see that the West is perceived like a more secure place to invest, and that's already like a great knowledge about that. The second is, of course, the understanding what's happening in the industry and what the government can offer to the potential investors. The upgraded law on investment nannies, yeah, you know that it provides a solution for the investors how to just get more benefits in terms of tax and capex and so on. I saw the question, and we can just touch the question about that later after the presentations. And the third one, of course, the last but not least, is the insurance. If before the war there was about the warranties and indemnities insurances for the transactions, and there were occasionally popping up on Ukrainian territory, mostly on the international deals where Ukraine is just a part. But now I think this will be just transformed into the question about the war and political risk insurances, which come in as a sort of aggregated solution with some financing instruments. And that's where I wanted to invite Alexander to continue, because in my opinion, he's the best expert, having lots of knowledge about how it is now from various expert agencies and other institutions working on this for Ukraine. So that's a QR code for the guide. You can browse around and share it to the people who might be interested. I think that's the goal for all the Ukrainian consultants and the agencies, to help foreign investors to feel that they are invited and will be loved in Ukraine and helped. But getting back to insurance, Alexander, and the other things, so the floor is yours.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you, Svetlana, for all this comprehensive information. I always like to work with data and analytics because the research is powering all the decisions in the future. That's why it's really important to keep track of things. And if 2022 was a very difficult year, now we see that 2023 is actually the appetite is getting back to some extent. And of course, some of the deals are more, as I believe, like the foreign investments are actually the Ukrainian investors reinvesting from their other sources of capital, if we can put it this way. But still, there is a track and trend of real international capital, which is also good. And it's great to observe that that is being properly recorded, and that it's available as a tool for decision making, as I already said. So let me probably thank you, Anna, for this fuss from with regards to insurance, because it's really important to highlight that insurance is the key prerequisite for any equity capital to come to Ukraine. So without insurance, as we observe it also from our perspective in Advantage Ukraine, the equity capital is not considering Ukraine if it's not properly insured. Well, here we must admit that some of the instruments that have been declared before and that everybody put the big hopes on, like for instance the coverage from MIGA or the political risk insurance tool that DFC has announced as part of their public commitments. Unfortunately, we don't see the scalability of those instruments, and this doesn't really add confidence to the equity investors to increase their even hypothetical exposure for Ukraine. So this still remains an issue, and what we more see today is this sort of like the trend for the risk sharing. Nobody wants to take single exposure. So even the cases that you were referring to, Svetlana, when the Dragon Capital deal, like it started as like one of the pilot deals that was addressed to MIGA in the mid 2022. So and then they were raising some specific funds to back it up, because the way MIGA works is multilateral agency basically that is getting the government backstops, like the security and extra final guarantees of the last extent from the governments, and they have specific donors who are also contributors to the World Bank. In this case, they have the government of Japan, they have the government of Switzerland, the government of Norway. They all contributed to the MEGA insurance fund. Well, what we see is that the MEGA is one of the key drivers potentially in this process that should have like set out the example and be a magnet, you know, to attract other insurance capital into the deal. Is kind of reinsuring itself one more time with the other facilities that are available. So we can touch this in the greater details in some private discussions, but what we see is that unfortunately the insurance capital is not accumulating and is not multiplying this way, but it's rather reinsuring itself. And this is the vicious trend that needs to be broken, because at the same time, we see that the more applications for the insurance are there on the market, and the more demand is for insurance, the easier it is for everybody and for all the stakeholders, including ourselves, to justify that more and more capital and exposure is needed, and the more activity is needed. So I will touch on these details probably on the way that the conversation flows. But let me now share a couple of words about Advantage Ukraine and what we actually do and how we can tackle these challenges together with the business community. So okay, so here we go. Advantage Ukraine is an NGO, basically, and it's combining the expertise of a think tank with the capabilities of a public investment bank. So basically, we facilitate and foster international debt and equity capital to Ukraine. And from one hand, we provide a specific portfolio of feasible deals, and from the other hand, we're looking for the different sources of capital that could be available for both Ukrainian sponsors of the projects and their potential international equity partners. We work with different instruments. Basically, it's from the soft loans and just the classic lending to guarantees and debt and equity, and again, the political and war risk insurance. So these are the three major goals that we are pursuing, and our objectives, including like the social input and responsibility objectives that we dedicate our efforts in building the Ukrainian investment ecosystem. So to some extent, we are unlocking the new capital sources because we are in the cutting edge of down to earth and practical communication, having at the same time the high level vision and access to public and sometimes private semi-concessional information due to our channels and sources of communication with the government institutions and with specially mandated financial institutions that are in the current landscape are predominantly backed up by the government concessional financing. So whenever, like every case, specific investment case that we are directing to this or that financing institution is getting the feedback saying, okay, this industry doesn't work, or this particular type of equipment or whatever, like the set of equipment does not meet the environmental criteria and is treated to potentially create more pollution than it usually does. And these nitty-gritty details that are dug out and that are processed by the part of our team who are like very neat and professional investment experts coming from investment banks, private equity funds, and the Big Four. So this investment banking team, they are really tackling these issues, and by tackling them, they are also accumulating the feedback, because whatever's happening now with the availability of financing or any type of other capital for Ukraine is a living organism. So since we're living in the situation that is not really traditional, at the same time, information we are getting on a daily basis is to some extent changing the outcomes of what's really going on the capital markets, because it's so dynamic, and also the international agenda is dynamic. So that's why we're constantly sourcing this feedback, and this way building the more global vision on these sources of capital. We're constantly talking to new sources, trying to see whoever got new mandate for Ukraine. As I said, it's usually government institutions that are backing up these finance institutions. But still, like some private capital is also gradually getting to the radar. So we also strengthen the capacity of both some local governments and central government to some extent, providing them data analytics and also advice on which projects could be feasible, which specific investment project would not be feasible and need to be improved in terms of assumptions, financial modeling, treatment of the data. And we justify it from the professional standpoint. And we also provide this piece of advice to the private sector in Ukraine. The companies get the assistance pro bono from us because we are supported by USAID, US Agency for International Development. So we are supported, so the program is still ongoing. We can afford ourselves to do this pro bono, and we're happy to help Ukrainian business and learn what sources of capital are available and how we can actually help. So by doing all this, we of course do the investment promotion and advocacy. This is inevitable, and we do this together with anybody who is traveling and who is talking to international capital and other stakeholders from international community. That's our common goal and objective to actually educate these guys that Ukraine is live, that Ukraine is available for business, and that there are feasible projects in Ukraine. Here you can see a bit of a history, how it's been all set up. So we first started this global investment promotion campaign. It was launched by the president of Ukraine, and we rang the bell on the New York Stock Exchange. There was a big government delegation. And basically then we set out the message to the world that you don't have to underestimate Ukraine, and that Ukraine is actually covering a lot of opportunities within it. We just need to think about the proper framework, how the world and international capital markets can support Ukraine in the way of providing their exposures and backing up their investors to come to Ukraine safely, and this process is still underway. I must admit we're not successful yet, but we're on the track. And the more we do, the more we contribute, and the more projects we actually direct and address to different sources, the more is the likelihood and the closer is this goal of when this whole click of matching the financing frameworks and the capital frameworks with whatever's available in Ukraine is gonna actually happen. So basically what we do is, again, this generated big pro bono marketing campaign, $10 million. We reached more than 150 million people globally. Unfortunately, it could have coincided with the period that first that Ukraine was promising about the counteroffensive and stuff, and then it sort of like ended up with a little bit of a disappointment in the capital markets as well. This way, some of the leads were lost in the way, but we think that they will recoup, and we still continue doing it, outreaching it through our own network and through these events, like the events like today, to get the reach to the bigger audience. Those reports that we've seen today are really fantastic, tailored reports and whatever the EQUA with KPMG are doing to create extra data and analytics and M&A is highly welcomed, is fantastic. What we can contribute to the basket is our vision of slightly adapted macro research. So we do the analysis of macro snapshot, and we do some recommendations on the industries that, based on these macro data, look more promising to us. That's how we help the market today. So from one hand, we're guiding the investors. If somebody comes from different sources, either through the platform or through the ministry or directly or through other different channels, we help these investors to understand what is the potential pipeline in Ukraine, because we're accumulating a big database of projects. Of course, the majority of these projects are far from being implemented, but still they create the potential pipeline in phases. So we can split it into those that are ready for investments and are feasible today. And there are dozens of them. There are not hundreds of them even, but they can be for substantial amount with specific sponsors that are bankable, compliable, that are passing all the KYCs, that they have their own dry powder and equity, that they're ready to contribute, who can perform the role of the local partner that you were referring earlier today. That is really important. So this is something we can help and advise on. So if the investor is really looking for some specific industry, we can provide analytical research data in this industry, and we can complement it with specific projects that could meet his or her requirements and criteria and eligibility criteria in particular. So we also help with business development. So essentially, if this is more related again to somebody who's some companies are looking for the outsourced manufacturing, or if we talk about the big rebuilding and reconstruction process that is managed by the specific ministry in our country, where the big international contractors, smaller contractors coming to Ukraine, we can also help to match with the local businesses here, because normally if the procurement happens, we are also one of the advocates, and the government's actually doing this, that part of the financing, part of the funds should be left in the country through the minimum level of localization. And this is inevitable. Whenever somebody's coming, some components could be assembled in Ukraine. It makes even economic sense. So we are tracking this, and this can already become a little basis for the future foreign direct investments as well. And then the investment banking advisory, this is the comprehensive service that I mentioned about, performed by the group of key professionals with a big experience in investment banking, private equity, and Big Four. So we were looking for potential financing structures. We can combine them because, as I mentioned, now the risk sharing is a big trend. Everybody wants to share risk. So if it's EBRD, it could come with DFC, or vice versa, then IFC could join. And then if an ECA with commercial bank together with IFI, and then if it's all extra insured, then it's super blessed, and then the likelihood of the funds obtained is really growing. So basically, we mobilizing as experts the investment banking and investment relation professionals. So here you can also get the QR code to our team. Again, so we are, to some extent, we're filling the gap, because the investment banking services with war vanished. So the investment banks we're not that active as we were. Now they're getting back on track, and it's really good to see because the more professional investment advisories in the market, the more drivers of the M&A or the leverage attraction are there, and this is a good thing. So here, as you see, the number and the investment opportunity. So this is the portfolio I was referring to. So this is a big pipeline. Again, this is not the biggest pipeline in the country I've seen, because I've seen number of projects and some of them are super hypothetical. So we were filtering them constantly. We take part in numerous groups. We contribute to the list of projects of Kyiv School of Economics that has been gathered by the Ministry of Economy. We contribute to the list of projects of Ukraine Development Fund that is potentially managed by BlackRock and JP Morgan, with the McKinsey is accumulating these projects, and some of our projects were added there. So we know all the lists that are on the market. So there are bigger numbers than these. So and these 100 investment opportunities, 22 billion. This is already to some extent pre-filtered, although we see that at least 3 billion out of these 22 are the real deals that could potentially happen, and that are in the state of close execution that's either ongoing or could start right away. And here are some of this is just some of the selective stakeholders and partners that we work with. Again, as I said, we know about any available products and instruments from international finance institutions, development finance institutions, export credit agencies that are becoming more and more active. And as I said, we need more activity also from the vendors. So if anybody now on the webinar is considering to come to Ukraine and is looking for insurance, you can apply to your export credit agency and they will consider you. Like, for instance, you can do this in Germany. Like, Germany has a special dedicated Ministry of Economy's program through German, one of the German consultants, and they also have the export credit coverage through Euler Hermes, their export credit agency. But there is an investment insurance for the German investors. There is an investment insurance for the Danish investors. There is investment insurance for French investors that could actually try and get it for the UK investors. So DFC could still insure the US and other projects. Of course, this is a long way to do this. If the Ukrainian project is applying for insurance, is always much more complicated. So if there are foreign investors on this webinar that are considering Ukraine and actually freaked out that their investment could be lost, they should really apply to their development finance institution locally or export credit agency and ask whether there are some instruments available for them, and they will 90% find these instruments. So, and if again, I'm also encouraging Ukrainian companies that are on the call now that are considering the business development and capex investments with the procurement of the new equipment. Always do the mapping of your equipment producers and see whether there's a critical mass. At least 30% of the contract belongs to single country. If 30% of German equipment or 30% of Italian equipment is there, you should know that you can try and apply for extra guarantee from export credit agency, which is then serving extra collateral and is helping you to raise the financing. So, or you can actually apply to us and we can advise you on all this. We can help you and analyze your portfolio, analyze your checklist of your equipment and see what can be offered in this case. We're constantly mapping and updating these. This is just a snapshot of some of the export credit agencies' availability. But rather, you can. We are working on this one, and we're going to finalize it in a separate tool. So you can apply to us if you need this information. We will be happy to guide you through that. Basically, I think I can stop here with whatever we are doing. And these are just some of the examples that are not really relevant. So we encourage the Ukrainian companies to come to us and explore what is available, like what the capital sources we can offer. We obviously can suggest international debt capital, which to some extent was not entirely competitive recently, although we see the trend that this leverage capital is becoming more affordable now. It's associated with some monetary indicators like the inflation ratio and then the reference rate ratios. But we see the trend that they are going down. So there are two major rates that are driving, floating rates that are driving the cost of the financing. One of them is in US dollars. The one that's replaced LIBOR is called SOFR. And then the SOFR used to be more than 6%, and now it's closer to 5%, and there's an expectation it's going to go down to 4.5%, which means that before the effective cost of international financing in US dollar was roughly 9%. Now it's gradually getting to 7-8ish, and then so it should get to 6 eventually somewhere. Well, the European financing Euribor is already lower. It's roughly 3.5 now, and which already brings the financing to the level of 6.5% per annum. And this can be complemented with the financing from Ukrainian banks. So if your company is under levered and you still can get more leverage, but the capacity of your banking Ukrainian banks partners that does not allow you to get this financing, you can easily go and look for international financing. Well, saying easily is easier said than done, because it's still a big procedure. It involves excessive number of documents, policies to be filled in. But again, we can still help you with this. So if you apply to us, we can navigate you and help you to get access to this loan financing. And if you are the foreign investor looking for the targets, again, welcome to us. We can navigate you, and if you need some advice on what instruments are available for you, even if you don't have access, sometimes it happens that companies from the country of origin do not have direct access to the financing institutions. We can even help you with that. So no problem. We're in contact with them, and we'll be happy to match all the interests together. So briefly on what we're doing and what is the current landscape in the market, and I'll be happy to answer more questions.
Alexandra, Anna, thank you so much for such insightful and what is very important, very practical information. This was the major idea behind today's event. Of course, we cannot in 1 hour cover all the topics and deep dive into the issues that require considerate discussion and research. But I believe that the major point why we gathered today together is to give the message to the foreign investors and to the Ukrainian business that they are not alone, that there are experts on the market, there are resources available, and there is process which is ongoing. It has never stopped, and it has even boosted and recovered in 23. And if you need and require support and help with entering Ukraine or solving issues with the financing or attracting investor, there are experts on the market who are available, and they have the resources and tools which can be used and can be practical for you. We still have some time, and we've got some questions during the registration phase. By the way, if this is to the audience, if you have questions that you would like to ask at the moment, please feel free to post them in the Q&A section of the platform, and a couple of questions that are kind of provoking. I would really like to voice them, and maybe both Alexandra and Anna, you can contribute to answering. One of the questions that we've been posed was in respect of the currency controls. Of course, this is one of the very important and significant topics that are being questioned by the investors. And the question is, what is the current status of currency controls under martial law? I understand that previously Ukrainian incorporated businesses were limited on the amount of foreign currency payments, and further the question goes around this topic. So maybe Anna, if you would like to
Yes,
take it.
thank you. I can go. So yes, indeed, that's an issue. Basically, any withdrawal of the dividends is prohibited. That's been raised constantly by the business, saying, look, if you want to invite the investors, you need at least to say when and how we're going to address this matter. Because, for example, I heard from some of my friends from the private equity that that's a sort of a no-go for just bringing the deal to the investment committee, because it's depending on the plans of the private equity. Some they want to see a short-term ability to get income, but that there could be different. So indeed, it is there. I heard that the National Bank of Ukraine is working on some sort of solution for that. I do hope that it will be presented at the Berlin Recovery Conference, because it's a proper place to sort of show how we progress on that. On the borrowings, it's a little bit, there are some better. So the old borrowings cannot be recovered, but the new ones, they can be subject to some conditions which are set for them. But what I heard from the specialists, that the basic rule would be that for bringing the new money into Ukraine, you will be allowed to just withdraw something in return, but those rules are still being designed. But within the Ukrainian business, it's clearly one of the first questions which we hear, and which we on our side commend that should be resolved in some reasonable time. Yeah, that's on my side.
What I can contribute here is that indeed the URC, the conference, could be the good place for this, because last time National Bank waived some of the components, because there was a full ban for the exports, and the capital controls were 100%. And then mid of last year, they allowed the intercompany loans and loans to finance institutions servicing still. There is a grace period. I know that you cannot be servicing principal faster than 3 years upon disbursement, but you can still be servicing with interest, so which allows the quasi-dividend expatriation from the country. But again, it's tricky during the martial law. But what was done is already the big move, and I also know that they are working, and we can just promise together with Anna that we'll be doing everything which is in our core to convince them that it should be done. Because when we are accumulating specific requests and inquiries from international companies that cannot expatriate or service their loans, we're directing these applications to the National Bank from our side, and the more we get them, the more they hear.
Thank you, Alexandra, Anna. One of another question that I would like to voice here is kind of provoking thoughts. Let's take it. The recovery is only possible after the war ends. Let's be fair. If bombs are falling, it's not a recovery. The question: what are the major requests you see at this stage from investors, sectors, types?
Yeah, okay, I can go. It's fair enough. Indeed, as I said, when we came to Plan B, showing that the war will not be over and over again, what means over, but general, that we will face this a couple of years more ahead. Unfortunately, there were some just investors which were like, okay, let's let's talk about that after the end of the war. But nevertheless, there is another group of investors who are ready to do it during the war. And I think that's, I see them more and more coming. That's specifically for some sectors. So now it's not just everything. I would say, okay, defense is different. Yeah, it has its own logic behind because it's a different demand, different sort of pace, whatever. But there are many. On the other industries, I would say that infrastructure and construction, so they are together, and there could be different sort of infrastructures. And the energy is crucial. So, and the third one would be probably the processing, and I will see then mining after. So in the first two, we see investors, the newcomers that are not present in Ukraine, who want to explore this opportunity. This basically the feasibility study. They want to understand how the market works, what has been changed because of the war, any new rules of the game and the regulation, and what is government ready to do for them if they are like a huge investor, any incentives, any negotiations on that, any sort of help with the implementing the project. So that's what we feel on our side. Of course, my bubble is smaller than the others, but this is just fresh impressions.
The organic response of the market, and you've seen this in your report as well, that the asset light industries are coming to the front, and things like innovations, information technologies, telecommunications. These are industries that are organically responding to the challenges. To provide the more profound and kind of systematic approach so that the brick and mortar economy also develops, because this is crucial for the GDP in Ukraine still. There are a number of prerequisites. The way that I see it from the physical protection, at least the trend that I observe is that with all the recent missiles, there is an intention, to start building these concentrated. Somebody's talking about the decentralization, but at the same time, it probably makes more sense to do the agglomerations of the critical business and industrial components in specific regions, and then protect them with the air defense system. So the air defense systems cannot be spread. So as long as you spread whatever they need to protect, you get almost nothing covered. Versus if you put the concentration, there is a risk that it's going to be targeted, but it's easier to protect as well, because if you have it concentrated and you have 3 air defense systems for the region available, or 2 of them, you can cover the critical mass and the majority of the business and industries in the region. And so I see this as a coming trend for the coming couple of years, that Ukraine will be depositing the air defense systems, because it's inevitable that we'll be getting more, and thanks to the military armed forces, we are preserving to some extent whatever we've been given. And so the way it's going to be developing, that the government will be also developing some infrastructure and protecting it together with the civil infrastructure, and that's where the other business development should be in order to be physically protected. And from the terms of from perspective of the investment insurance, again, as I said, there need to be more and more applications in the real life interest. So the arguments of absence of the financial deals and portfolio are taken out of the arsenal of the decision makers. So they are the ones who are usually using this to defend themselves and say, oh, there are no real interest, no real deals, so what to insure? The more there are applications and the more there are professional applications, the more is the likelihood that this is going to be scaled in the future as well.
Thank you, Anna, Alexandra. On my side, a couple of comments. That need to defend the country creates the opportunities for the business and investing into this sector by itself. We do see a lot of talks, especially in respect of joint ventures in the military sphere. This is less public, obviously, for the known reasons, but there is a lot of international interest in defense and military and towards cooperation with the Ukrainian businesses. We see a certain progress there, and we believe this is going to be one of the significant sectors in investment and deal making in the years to come. this is our reality, but on the other side, opportunity for investment as well. Just recently, we've been talking to Ukernafta about their immense program in respect of attracting investment. I have to follow up how it is going on, but they have really big plans in providing the fields for exploration, including foreign and domestic investors. We'll see how it goes, but they definitely have quite a bit of traction and discussion around the topic, and they do have their requests from the investors who are doing their feasibility studies. Also worth mentioning, probably in answering this question, that Horizon Capital have just closed their fund, the fourth fund, which was planned to be 200 million, and they closed it 100 million over the planned target. So there is definitely business and discussion and dialogue going on. It is different from what it used to be. Yes, it is. There is this challenge, and yes, it is. But there are plenty of talents and capabilities in Ukraine who are doing well, even in these circumstances, adapting to the situation and continue to do the business under these circumstances. One of the questions which I would like to take from my professional point of view, it related, let me read it. Have you been able to identify a positive, negative trend in the multiples paid in M&A transactions? Does the potential market recovery affect these valuations? When speaking about Ukraine, it's difficult to refer to big data in terms of deals and multiples used. It's always very individual. It's always been like that, because at the mature markets it's different. You do have the benchmarks, you do have the benchmark databases, so it's kind of easier to understand where you are as opposed to others. So my comment would be that yes, the multiples probably are not at the highest at the moment. However, despite the common expectation of the market that it would be the buyer's market and the sellers would be willing to dispose at any cost, at any terms, this hasn't happened. This is for sure. What has happened and what we do see at the deals which are closing is that the process has become more difficult. The gap between the expectations of the buyers and the sellers is wider than ever. So the process takes more talks, negotiations, compromises to a certain extent. We also see that the due diligence process has become more thorough. We do have in our due diligence reports in legal, financial, tax, a separate section which is the impact of war, the war-imposed regulations, challenges, and this kind of things. So this has to be taken into consideration. And the other thing which we also see in SPAs and in deal structuring is a wider usage of earn-outs, call options. The sellers want to have a better guarantee and better visibility of the future. So the postponement of final payments on the deals is a more typical thing at the moment. Anna, maybe you would like to add something to that.
Yeah, Svetlana, thank you. I just want to mirror your comments, and I'll put it so that Ukrainians is a very optimistic nation, so stubborn and optimistic. So I do see that on the buy side, of course, there is an expectation of the discounts and the different approach to valuation, but we don't see the same agreeing with this approach on the sell side, and there is indeed a gap. Yeah, it's generally the people are very positive about their assets and the value they have. So maybe it's just the peculiarity of the response to the war, but indeed it's an interesting trend. So we'll see how it will work out for this year and next.
Well, I would also add that the multiples remain on a decent level in the industries that proven to be resilient to some extent. So you can definitely see this in pharmaceuticals. Like you do not see the major drops there. They were evaluating themselves at 8 to a beat that before. That is probably 7 now, so they don't fall too low. And some of the growing industries like the building materials is an obvious good bet on, and then some of the energy components and whatever is generating the foreign currency is still becoming and remaining resilient. That's where the multiples basically stay. Yeah, but generally the trend, or it's also the areas like that are under levered, like the commercial real estate traditionally is not really levered in Ukraine, so it's predominantly equity plays that are not really in distress, because normally if you have a crisis and you have a leverage, you have a loan in your capital structure, and the bank is pushing you, that's how you're becoming stressful, and that's how your yield expectation falls, and then how it grows for the buyer. And this is not really the case for Ukraine, and we've seen this in past crises as well. So it's if it's under levered industry, then it's also not really hit by the crisis.
Thank you very much, colleagues. I think we are close to the closing of our webinar today. Thank you so much for your participation. We are very glad to see such a high interest in this event from the audience. Maybe a couple of words from Anna, Alexandra to close.
I don't know, it's hard to add. Thank you for coming, and we see a great number of attendees, so we hope that this is useful. Spread it out, all the tools, to make sure that we present fully the positive side of Ukraine. Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. Again, we all believe in the future of Ukraine, and let's not raise our heads down. So we still have a lot of promising events ahead of us, and if we manage to still do some positive tractions during the war times, let's prepare ourselves for the best in the near future.
Thank you. Indeed, if we can make it now, only imagine what we can make after these horrible times are over. Thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you all on the investment topics and on the actual deals in Ukraine. Thank you.
Svetlana.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.